Hey guys, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast. Um, I'm Steve. We got Marty, and we also have John Parr with us. I guess
He's
there
going to
was
get
some
water.
miscommunication. Anyways, he went to go grab water. He'll be back. How you been, Marty? It's been 2 weeks since we did the show.
Oh, I'm I'm extremely tired of real estate transactions, pretty much in general. Still trying to buy and sell a house. So right now everything is good. Selling the house, of course. Now buying that other house that we have is back in turmoil. So just signing my name umpteen million times and trying to figure out what the hell everyone's talking about. But it's a lot of just dates and people. You have basically like three families that need to relocate. So the people moving out of there and we're moving out of here and into there, and somebody else is moving out from somewhere else into our house who's renting right now. So it's like trying to get everybody coordinated and figured out has been difficult. So uh, escrow got pushed back another 30 days, so now it's like the 28th or something like that of December. So just trying to get all of that settled, but hey, the week came out good.
Mhm.
So that's all that counts. So I'm smoking some Gorilla Glue right now from the aquaponics system, and it's good stuff. So you know, it's it's just trying, I guess, is the best way to put it. I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way with all your regulations and meetings and
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
It's just
I got a bunch to
uh,
talk about
like
later.
it sucks, and I know it's not over with. That's the best. That's the best I got. So I'm just gonna keep plugging away. Hope that we get everything figured out and everybody's happy and nobody backs out, because that would be the real like shit kicker, is if one of the three of us for some reason backs out, or I guess I should say the other two, because I don't want to stay here a second longer than I have to. But if one of the other two for any reason decides to back out, then both deals are dependent on the other one, and it, yeah, it'll just suck. We'll put it that way.
Let's
So
remind everyone this all started because of a change in cannabis laws.
right, otherwise I'd just be popping seeds and ready to go in my backyard, and my patients would be happy, and I'd be slightly sad because of the little bit of dip in the market. But besides that, like it would be fine. I went this same time, and of course Google loves to remind me of this, but like this same time, uh, 3 years ago, that's exactly what I'd be doing. I'd be popping seeds and getting ready to pick plants for next year's outdoor. And so 3 years ago, I would have had a 72 plant count, and 2 years ago, I'd had a 48 plant count, and now I have a 12 plant count. So that's how fast things have deteriorated here. And of course, after we put in yards and yards of soil in the back and set up beds and automatic timers, and now I can grow some great vegetables. I got lots of tomatoes. If anybody needs tomatoes, but dispensary doesn't pay quite the same for tomatoes as it does for medicine. So even if I wanted to, I couldn't grow for anybody else. And my plant count's only 12. So that would be if me and my wife both have cards, then I could have 12 total plants. Or recreational, because as of January 1st, the new regulations go into place where you can't have medical and recreational at the same place. So I used to be able to have my card, which gave me 6, my wife's card, which would give her 6, and then the 4 that we get from recreational. And now you can't even get the additional 4. You have to pick. So you can either have your 4 recreational, or you can have a medical card that you can pay like, I think it's something like $400 now by the time everything is said and done, to be able to grow 2 extra plants. And that's legalization.
Where do you live now, and where are you headed?
Southern Oregon, and just somewhere else in Southern Oregon, maybe. I guess we'll see.
So yeah, thanks I want to introduce John Parr. I've known John Parr since I worked over at the aquaponics source, and I think that's where we first time we met. I think you were visiting Sylvia, and yeah. So you have a bunch of different cool things going on. You worked on a lot of different projects. I thought you'd be a really cool guest to bring on the show. I know I enjoyed your talks over at the Aquaponics Association. I wanted to bring you on and just have you talk about some of the different cool stuff that you've done.
Yeah,
So
thanks,
thanks for
Steve.
joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I sure appreciate it. So my name's John Parr, and I have some experience in commercial aquaponics, farming organic vegetables. We had a 10-acre property in Watsonville, California, with 8.5 acres of greenhouse. We, as my partner and I, put together a farm there that was a little over 50,000 square feet of floating raft beds. We had 107,000 holes, 106,000 and change on full lettuce spacing. And see, we had a 99,000 square foot house of hydroponic tomatoes, all heirloom and also hydroponic. And then we have another half of a 2-acre greenhouse, so another acre in cucumbers. And let's see, had a bunch of chard in there, eggplant. We rotated a few different crops through, but mostly it was cucumbers and eggplant. So yeah, I have some commercial experience. And then when I parted ways with that partnership, that was called Viridis Aquaponics. I started a nonprofit called School Grown, which is dedicated to putting aquaponic and sustainable education in classrooms, schools, community gardens, and so on. So if you want to get a hold of me, look up schoolgrown.com or .org. My email, if you want to shoot me an email, is JP, standing for John Parr, so just JP at schoolgrown.org. And I'd love to hear from you and see what you have going on. We have one working 2,000 square foot greenhouse, 1,800 square foot greenhouse up in Felton, California, at San Lorenzo Valley High School. And we have another 2,200 square foot one being built in Soquel, which is right in the foothills out of Santa Cruz. That's actually just begun. We spent the last couple of weeks clearing out the land and getting ready for our site, opening up some sunlight to a really pretty piece of property in Soquel. And if anybody's interested, and I'll post it again later, but I threw my email on the back wall if anybody can see. Perhaps the Hangouts isn't clear enough. And also advertising for anyone who wishes to come help us build this greenhouse. It's a great community project. We are partnering up with a company called Global Aquaponics, who puts folks with disabilities to work in an aquaponic greenhouse. So it is a commercial venture. It gives folks with disabilities a real meaningful place to be, show up and take care of the plants, and they plant the seeds, they harvest. They each work with a caretaker so that everything is safe and they feel comfortable. And if they need help, they've got help right there. That's Global Aquaponics, and they'll be running this next greenhouse. It'll be a 30-foot by 72-foot greenhouse, and employ about 5 or 6 folks with disabilities every single day of the week. So we're looking forward to that. So if anybody has time for next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we're going to have work days there. So if you've got the weekend open, any of the 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, we'd love to have you come out. Just drop me an email and let me know so I can give you the directions of how to get there. We'll be building the whole entire thing. And also at lunchtime, we'll do a little class time and question and answer for people who are coming to get some education along with their volunteer effort. So, and that's in Soquel. Let's see, what else do we have going on? We've got, I personally work on a number of projects. Since I'm not completely busy commercial farming anymore, it's given me opportunity to do some consultation for up and coming commercial aquaponic growers. Definitely had a lot of interest in some jobs consulting here in the cannabis trade, as you guys can imagine. And we've got some really cool projects. I'm part of a company called Mythic Cuts, which is a clean clone company. that's setting up now in Oakland. So we got a real busy next couple of months in front of us. We recognized here quite a while ago, and kind of late to get to the party, I suppose, too, but there's a huge demand, as you guys have probably talked about, for clean, no pesticide, no mildicide, no Eagle 20 clones to be had out there. So we're starting from clean genetics from the ground up. We don't use any sprays. We got some biological tricks in the bag to keep everything real strong and active. So that's Mythic Cuts. What else have I got going on? I'm making a tabletop spirulina unit. That's going to be a lot of fun. More on that soon. We've got some patent work here in the makes. I can't talk too much about till that, how that goes too. But yeah, we're looking forward to launching this tabletop kitchen use spirulina machine. So it'll be set up kind of like a coffee machine. So you wake up at a certain time and you got a shot of fresh spirulina right there waiting for you. We'll have some good in countries too. We'll have a real low power unit, a solar panel, and still have some automation, but keep it real simple and cheap.
That's really cool. It's funny that down in Jamaica, so like my bodyguard, the guy who's always armed, that's always with us.
Yeah.
He's the guy that raises all the spirulina, and he has all these tanks and bottles. And if you just saw him gardening every day, you'd never know that he was like this, badass dude. And here he doubles as like the muscle, not muscle, but like he keeps us safe. It's kind of funny.
So long we've been doing the podcast now, because I knew as soon as you said spirulina, Steve was gonna have to tell that story. So
yeah, that's funny. It's an odd little specialty that I'm finding more and more common, and I didn't expect it to be. I haven't heard too much about spirulina. For me, spirulina is like aquaponics was 10 years ago, where not too many people knew about it. And now that I'm into it and paying attention, I've got all kinds of people coming out saying, "Oh yeah, look at my bottle, and here's a picture of my fish tank that I converted last week," and that sort of thing. It's pretty neat product. I don't know if you guys know too much about it, but it's pretty easy to grow. It's extremely digestible. It has a tendency to pull out toxins and heavy metals from the environment where it grows, which is good for remediation areas. It's also, you should take note, if you're going to grow your own spirulina, make sure that you start with clean water and clean nutrients for your fertility. Because if you don't, you're going to end up concentrating whatever wasn't good in that water and then eating it. But if you grow clean spirulina, it does the opposite effect in your body. Well, I guess the same effect. It absorbs toxins and heavy metals from your body and helps you pass them. So it's a cool plant, good nitrogen, very digestible, kind of the basis of life, a single-celled, rapidly growing, full of chlorophyll superfood of spirulina. So that's looking forward to that.
Not only that, so there's a bunch of crazy shit that people are doing with spirulina. So there's a guy so I was just recently at the MJ BizCon, which is the big marijuana business con. There's guys that are using genetically modified spirulina introduced with cannabis genes in order to produce cannabinoids and terpenes via spirulina. How crazy is that?
That is crazy. And I bet you it's a very effective additive. It doesn't grow anything else, so it can devote some serious energies toward it.
Oh yeah, no, it's totally off of some kind of phycocyanin 2, I think is what he said was the gene that they were modifying. Yeah. But it was really, really interesting. I talked to the guy for like 45 minutes. I was like, dude, like that is really, really interesting. I've never heard of anyone crossing cannabis with algae. So, but it's really neat with the algae. I mean, they produce fish food from it. They produce cattle feed, chicken feed, human food, gasoline. There's a company making gasoline from it, or a fuel from it. All different kinds of things. You can make fertilizer out of it.
Yeah, it's real high nitrogen. Yeah, it's kind of the basic block of plant life on the planet. So, and because it will grow in highly alkali water, it's pretty easy to grow safely at home, as long as you make sure you pay attention to just a couple parameters, mostly the pH of the water. It's not that it loves high pH, it's that other plants don't. So once you get a clean culture, it stays pretty clean. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've always been very intrigued with the making your own fertilizer for your garden and making your own feed for your livestock at home. So spirulina was kind of the logical next step for me. I've done a lot of work with black soldier flies. Kind of took over operations of a company called Elusens in Salinas that was doing black soldier fly breeding program. There's so much to be done with that critter, black soldier fly, and it really is an effective home gardening tool, home livestock, home sustenance critter. It'll eat food faster than you could ever imagine. I had a bin by my chicken coop for a couple of years for black soldier flies, and I didn't do anything special at all. I made it in the course of an evening after looking at some drawings online, and I put some food in there, and we got natural colonization of black soldier flies from it. And then just from that day out, all of our composts, all of our kitchen scraps went straight to the bin. In fact, they went to the chickens first, and whatever the chickens didn't eat by the next morning got scooped into the bin. So the chickens got their share of the fresh strawberry cuttings and watermelon rinds and so on, but the worms got to finish it all up, and then the chickens ate the worms again. So we just had an open crawl-off tube. The soldier flies, when they're all ready, they just walk out the ramp and out the door. So the ones that walked out during the daylight became instantaneous chicken food. The chickens would stand in front of the tube where they drop out like an amphitheater and just wait for one to drop and then fight for it when they got to the middle. It looked like a crater, a bomb had gone off next to it from them scratching where the exit was. I had one by my fish tank in aquaponics too, and that was a lot of fun. That one I had a couple thousand bluegill in a big outdoor tank with a soldier fly bin next to it. And the bluegill would just line right up in a circle right below the tube. Like 3-4 layers deep, you'd see them. They left that whole dome in the middle open so they had sight. And when one would drop out the tube before it hit the water, they would have it without question. And there'd be 10 hitting the water at the same time. So it was a lot of fun. So soldier flies are a good experience, a great source of protein for your livestock. And pigs eat them, chickens eat them. A lot of fish will eat them. Some don't. Tilapia didn't care for them, but I don't raise tilapia anymore either. So they would eat them and probably digest them pretty well if you ground them up. But yeah, the bass, the bluegill, my sturgeon, my catfish, shell crackers, those would all take them crazy good.
So you were one of the people at aquaponics has done some work with sturgeon. Do you want to talk about some of the challenges and some of the stuff that that comes along with raising sturgeon? I know there's a lot of interest, especially because there's a lot of higher end sturgeon now, especially for the private fish trade. You can get $2,000 to $15,000 for some of these diamond sturgeon. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that comes along with that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm consulting for a commercial sturgeon farm right now that's adding aquaponics to treat their wastewater, which is a great project in Wilton, California. The greenhouses are all built. They have hundreds of thousands of pounds of sturgeon. I was just there over the weekend, and I saw about 150 pounder cruise by the edge of the tank. They keep them all in above ground tanks that are about 6 foot deep and 50-foot diameter. How many do they have? I should know this count by heart, but it's a couple dozen of those big tanks. And sturgeon are a great fish. I personally have been interested in fish longer than I've been interested in aquaponics. So when I discovered aquaponics as a way to get organic hydroponic farming, I couldn't wait to expand my fish hobby and culture and breeding and so on. So the sturgeon were the pick for me because in California, where we live, the law says that you cannot, without an aquaculture permit, so the ordinary person and backyard user, for which I was when I started out this thing, the law said that you're not allowed to have any temperate fish except goldfish or koi or sturgeon less than 8 inches long. You have to buy them when they're less than 8. They're obviously going to get bigger once you buy them. So for me, it was actually, ironically enough, kind of a rare and specialty fish that was very easy and law friendly to get into in California. So I went and I bought some sturgeon fingerlings. And by the way, the reason for that particular exemption of all the fish out there, why can you only get California white sturgeon in California without permit? And the reason why is because the California sturgeon business was needing some help when they were getting going. And the way sturgeon grow is there's a certain number of fish that are small. They're just always going to be small. They're runt fish. So the aquaculturists knew that if they just kept all their fish and kept feeding them, they would end up with this runt population that would never get big enough for caviar and not decent for food either. But they'll still eat and still take up expenses and space in the water. So as a boon to the aquaculture industry, the department allowed them to sell their small fish to the pet and aquarium industry. That lets the aquaponics or the aquaculture business get rid of they can call their stunts and still get some money back into their table for it. So it helped them. And it gave the pet industry, you know, a new and temperate fish they can play with. So that was kind of good for everybody. That's still the law today. You can buy sturgeon fingerlings with no aquaculture permit, so long as they're less than 8 inches, which is kind of fun and exciting. And that's why I got into it. Plus, I love sturgeon fishing, and I love the food. The fish is top of the world for quality of flavor. They're a really unique fish. They're sometimes called a dinosaur fish. They grow, I don't know, I think about 15 feet long is the max size. They're probably a little over that for world record. They're very commonly 10 to 12 foot. If you're fishing for them out in the San Francisco Bay, they have a window slot that you can keep them if you get them on hook and line. I think it's bigger than 54 inches or 42. It might be bigger than 42 inches and then less than 72 inches. And the reason why is they have to be up close to that size to spawn, and they want all the fish out there to have a chance to get a spawn. And then once they get, you know, real big, they can actually spawn again. So they're trying to keep those real big monster fish out there because they produce an awful lot of eggs for the native environment. So the sturgeon, just to dispel some myths about them for anybody who's interested in growing them, they have a very fast growth cycle when looked at it over several years. A lot of people think, wow, sturgeon, you know, 1,000-pound, 12-foot-long fish, that must be hundreds of years old. And indeed, it might be. But they get to that size pretty quick for any fish. They're one of the faster growing ones. Aquaculture sturgeon looks to have 1-pounders in a year or greater, but at least 1-pounders the first year, 3 to 5 the second year, and sometimes even exceeding it, and then 12 to 15 pounds the third year, and then 20 pounds per fish per year thereafter. So when you look at a 3-year fish that's 12 to 15, or if you're doing it really good, you get some 20-pounders in 3 years, that's a lot of weight. You know, it's 5 or 6, 7 pounds a year of weight, which is way greater amount of weight per pound of fish growth than tilapia or most of the commonly catfish, most of the commonly farmed fish. So I thought, hey, this is a great long-term product. They grow fast. They are an efficient use of food. Their feed to weight conversion ratio is about 1.15, which is great. Better than catfish, better than tilapia, way better than all the trout and salmonids. So yeah, with all those things dicing in the right category, and the fact that it's also a California native fish and a beautiful fish and a fun fish. By the way, they're real big and gentle giants. You can put your hand in the water and they'll cruise right by and let you pet them on the way down. We've always, the kids at school, when we have field trips, a lot of times I can just reach my hand down in and pull one out, and they're always so amazed that I can reach into a bowl of water and pull out a fish that's 3 feet long. So we've had a good run with them. They're great meat. There's no bones. They're full of cartilage. Their skin is scaleless, but they have some big scaled plates down their side and their dorsal for about the first 4 years of their life. Someplace around 3 or year 4, those scales fuse to the skin, which is an interesting thing just for whether the fish is kosher or not. So actually folks who need to or care about kosher foods, The sturgeon is technically a scaled fish up until year 3 or 4, after which it's not. So that's a fun fact. And coincidentally, if you're growing sturgeon for the meat and caviar market, you can't sex the males and females until they're about 3 or 4 years old. At which point you can, and then they'll pull out all the males for food fish immediately. That's kind of their sweet spot for growth anyway. And then they'll keep the females for another 3 to 5 years. Caviar females are 6 to 8 years old on average when they're harvested for caviar. At which point they're 100, 125 pounds, 150 pounds sometimes, and they're worth a lot of money. Like wholesale per fish, I think is about $6,000 to $8,000. Retail,
Wow.
triple that. The sturgeon farm where I'm working, they sell their product. 100% of the meat that leaves their farm now for sturgeon is smoked. So they also get the value add of smoked sturgeon. So they have a smokehouse and a clean room, certified clean kitchen for food processing and for smoking. And they're doing, well, I forget the figure, and it fluctuates according to their supply, but they're a couple thousand pounds a week of smoked fish out of their place. They sell it to Costco, and I'm not exactly sure, nor would I say what they get, but I know Costco sells it for about $36 a pound. So if Costco are like other markets, then they're getting about half of that. So they're probably getting about $18 a pound out of those fish with smoked meat, maybe even a little more. So great market.
Take that smoked fish, coat it in cannabis honey, you can double the price again.
You could more than double it. Yeah, that's for sure, and it's so good if you've ever had smoked.
Wow, he's ready to pay triple right now, just himself. He's like, I got it.
Right? And because John Parr grew it, it's triple.
And it's something special. Just can't put my finger on it, but there's something special about this. I get so happy when I have this one.
No,
so,
but
they're doing
but seriously, like that's some of the other opportunities that are coming into the market now. And then the other thing too is that like not even that, you're seeing a lot of like. I know a lot of different people in the aquaponic industry are moving into essential oils and cosmetics and a bunch of other things, not only just vegetables and fish. So it's kind of neat. Have you ever worked with pacu?
I have. They grow the fastest of any fish I've ever had.
Me too. That's why I was asking.
And they commonly, folks don't know that, or they're surprised to hear it, because for the aquarium industry, you underfeed everything to keep it small for your aquarium.
Oh yeah.
But as soon as you start feeding those things all that they want, and they want a lot,
they'll get 4 or 5 foot quick.
Yeah. Well, I had some that were probably, they came in as maybe 50-cent pieces. They were that small, and in about 3 or 4 months, they were 2 pounds, which is outstanding. Yep. I mean, huge growth.
So flat out, I've gotten 3.5 pounds of growth in 1 year with pacu.
Yeah, wow.
There's no other fish that grows that fast.
And they do great on a vegetarian diet too, which is great. So I fed mine rabbit pellets, rabbit food, alfalfa and Timothy hay pelletized up. It's real cheap on a bulk level. It's like 11 cents a pound, and you can get incredible growth rates with them. So I really like pacu. The only trouble is they're tropical. So for us on a large scale, you got to consider what it's like to heat water. But for a home system and where you've got some good climate control, they're a great selection. And they're another one that you can have. They're another one you can have with no permits, because they're a tropical pet fish. Yep. You know what?
Go ahead.
I got a chance to visit Will Allen at a presentation he gave a few years ago. And one of the things he said in closing is that he was starting to raise pacu as well, and that in his opinion, of all the fish he's ever had, pacu was the best tasting. I haven't had a chance to eat one yet. I keep passing them on to other people or killing the poor things before it gets done. Which, by the way, just as long as I'm on the subject, if you guys are pacu growers, they're very sensitive to temperature change. So if you take them from 80-degree water and throw them into 75, which is what I did, belly up. Both of them turned belly up instantaneously, like it was a nuclear meltdown. They didn't do it at the same time. One of them did it when I introduced them into the new tank, and the other one did it when I introduced it to another tank. So Yeah, super sensitive to temperature change. And of all people, I know this. It's just that I seldom actually have any issues with it. So,
Right.
word of note, Paku are sensitive to temperature.
That makes sense. Natively being close to the equator and all of that.
Yeah,
They don't get much temperature changes in the Amazon.
Some fish freak out a little when things are out of ideal, but that one just feels over dead when it's out of ideal.
I think it's a lack of evolutionary process. They haven't adapted to it. So, yeah, no, that's cool.
So I've eaten both wild pacu and captive pacu, and when I was in Peru, I actually had a chance to just catch one on a hook and line, and it is a really good tasting fish. As far as freshwater white fish meat goes, it's definitely on the upper end of cool. Tastiness. It's not very oily, but it's not very fishy either. It's just a really good meat.
Does wild cod taste better? You said you caught both wild.
A little bit, but you're always going to have better meat with wild caught stuff because it's eating a better diet. All those different fruits and fishes and insects and who knows what.
Yeah, because I always grew up fishing here on the river. We always had, you could always tell the difference between fishery, like steelhead or salmon versus the wild caught ones because they clip the fin on the back when they come from the hatchery. And you can only keep ones from the hatchery at certain times. So you actually have separate limits. Like most of the time you can't keep any wild ones, but like sometimes if they have a big run, which they haven't had in a while, but they'll let you keep in certain stretches of the river. But anyway, you can only keep that, but the quality of the meat was always better on the wild caught ones. It's just, bright pink color in the salmon or sort of the steelhead was the wild caught steelhead just always had better flavor and seemed to cook better. And, I don't know, just a thing, I guess. Because I never really had a lot of captive fish until I started doing aquaponics, which was only 5 years ago or something like that. Like I was never big on like buying them at restaurants and stuff like that. It never tasted good or anything like that because I've had trout wild caught and all kinds of different things, and it's just never really been like other than smoked meat, and that's probably like one of the reasons why you see them smoking it before they send it out. I was thinking about that too. Was that I've enjoyed a lot of smoked fish that's been store bought, but aside from that, like even in nice restaurants and stuff, it's been difficult. But my friend who runs an aquaponics place and does catfish out here in Ashland, I got some from him, and it was really good for catfish. I've had wild caught catfish, and it's maybe that's because wild caught catfish is still just mediocre to start with, but it seemed about the same there. That's the only time I would say it's been about the same. But all the other fish I've had experience with, I've never had sturgeon, so that would be interesting. But trout, steelhead, salmon, all of those wild caught have been better, hands down.
Yeah, that's for sure, and it's a good point. It's one of the reasons I've been so passionate about finding locally sourced and varied food diets for my fish. We definitely do compost and composting worms, black soldier flies. I mean, now we're getting into the spirulina production and finding even commercially available feeds that are within the normal range of a particular plant, like feeding tilapia or pacu, those Timothy hay pellets. That's a natural food, even though it's commercially available, so it makes it cheap and easy for the aquaculturist. So I like to get them plenty of nutrients. I always like to put some salt in my water too, sea salt. And another reason that you mentioned smoked fish being better at the market, I don't buy any fish at the market. By the time they catch a fish, whether it was wild or farm raised, and cut it and package it,
sure,
it's already too fishy for my flavor.
Right.
Typically, because
yeah,
and I live here on the ocean and I fish, so I'm spoiled having been so used to fresh fish.
Right.
And that's true of all fish, and it's not because it's bad. It's simply because I'm spoiled and I've got a special taste for it. So I never order fish in restaurants. But smoked fish, you got to imagine the process that goes through. So at the fish plant where they've got living, fresh, wonderfully raised fish. They generally go them through a purge process where they don't feed them for a little bit and put them in salted water so the meat firms up. They go right into processing, brining, and into the smoker. So they are really fresh fish when they're smoked. They come out of the smoker, get vacuum bagged and frozen. So you can't possibly get, even if you're doing it yourself, a fresher fish than smoked fish vacuum bagged at a market like that. So I think that's part of the popularity and absolutely, I think an important thing when you're talking about turning our endeavors towards a commercial outlet. I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to smoke at least most of the fish that you come out of the product with. And then it's not perishable anymore. It's a great product. It's in the freezer. It lasts a very long time. So you can wait for markets to get weird and stabilize again before you milk your cells. You don't have to stress over having buyers on the day that you're harvesting fish. You can sell fish all year long or for quite a period of time after your big harvest boom, as opposed to having to regularly harvest in order to have a fresh fish supply. So smoked fish is a good way. I definitely recommend for my commercial consults that they focus on smoked fish as their end product for fish.
Oh yeah, I mean, and plus it's sort of something that's withstood the test of time. My father's side of the family is native to Northern California, Native Americans. It goes back, 10,000 years worth of roots there that have been catching salmon and steelhead from that river and smoking it to preserve it immediately so that it's available and good and high quality year round. That's that process will no matter what we do, as long as there's fish there. I mean, when you prepare it where you catch it and you don't freeze it or ship it or do any of that stuff to it, it's just a higher quality. And then obviously once you have it prepared, and you can ship it out from there. And that's the same thing that that they do now in that area still. A lot of the tribal members and stuff there, they still catch fish and smoke them up and around the campfire the same way and store them in their freezer year round. It's not it's a very simple process that's highly effective and easily scaled, I guess, to a commercial thing where you can get so much more for your product when you have to do so little to it. Preserves quality so much, salability goes through the roof, so makes a ton of sense. And it's tasty, super tasty. I like smoked fish.
That'd be a good slogan for an aquaponic cannabis company.
There you
Smoked
go.
fish and fish smoke.
That's right.
That's funny. Let's see, what else? I've been working on some, for quite a while, I've been making some small backyard aquaponic trailers and kits and greenhouses. I got a couple new ones to the line, so I'm looking forward to getting some good pictures and marketing drawings for those and getting them out there. I'm making several fiberglass tanks now for aquaponics with a real glass window. So when I make the mold for the tank, I include in the mold a flat space so we can mount real glass with silicone, which is I like. Why we're into aquaponics is we want to see the fish and have fun with the fish. So important to me is not only a window, but a really nice window that you want to look through like an aquarium. Having had lots of acrylic windows or plexiglass windows in fish tanks, I sure appreciate a real glass window too. So that makes it fun. I've got some exciting new units that'll be available with the filtration included right in a fish tank. And Ouroboros Farms in Half Moon Bay. I have a prototype that's been running for a couple of years now with kind of just a clever little way to handle solids with real low power consumption. I think that whole greenhouse is about 50 square feet. And it only runs on, let's see which pump I put in there. I think it was a 15 watt pump or a 10 watt pump. So real low power consumption. It keeps the whole thing filtered and running good and clean. At least I hope so. I haven't been up there in a while.
Steve's been there.
Yeah. How's that little greenhouse going? Or the little aquaponic trailer out front going?
It's going well.
Yeah. Is the fish still in there, or do the raccoons sweep them through?
Oh yeah.
There's still some in there?
No,
Good.
I think they picked off a couple of them, but there's still a few in
Yeah.
there.
Boy, there's the thing too. Raccoons, they give me torture at my place. I got into aquaponics in the first place to get away from gophers. Now that I'm into aquaponics, I battle raccoons instead. I just trade one yard terror for another. We've actually had raccoons get stuck in our greenhouse, which is no fun at all. You guys ever have raccoon troubles? I've had them
We
dig
had a
up plants of all varieties.
we had a raccoon get caught inside our koi feed bin one time at the R&D
Yeah.
greenhouse. He managed to like claw a hole through the side of the greenhouse because he smelled the food.
Mhm.
When he went in, there's a sensor camera and the floodlights turned on. The cameras, we have motion detectors because it's too much money worth of pot in there. And we got the whole thing on film, and then he went and found where the food was, lifted up the metal lid, climbed inside, and the metal lid closed, and he couldn't get out because the metal lid like closed enough and like wedged. And then he was stuck inside of it. So I come out there, and there's just like rambling, angry metal food container. So just held the lid on, carried it outside, took the lid off, and ran.
Yeah, I bet.
It was pretty funny.
I bet he was anxious to get out. We caught one in our garage one time. It got up in the rafters of the garage, and as soon as the daylight hit, it climbed up in the tallest rafter and hid and wouldn't leave. I mean, it would move if we tried to catch it, but it had too many places to go up in the attic storage. So we just left it alone in the garage and propped one of those live traps in the door. So the only way it had out was to go into the live trap. So sure enough, that night when it got dark, it went down and jumped itself into that live trap. But it really didn't like being there. And the poor thing had scraped all the fur off his back trying to get out of the live trap. So when I came out the next morning, he's in the trap, and he not bloody or hurting, but it took the hair off of his back from his tail all the way up to his ears. He had a bald racing stripe on him. So let that sucker go, and I thought, he must have some explaining to do with his raccoon friends. Going, hey man, what's with the new hairdo?
It's like a reverse mohawk, you know.
Reverse mohawk.
I feel like Parda could apply for Prodigy in like 1994.
I was always worried I'd have some raccoon with a reverse mohawk terrorize me in my nightmares. I'd recognize that one for sure.
That's funny.
We also at one time, back onto the subject of black soldier flies, they eat fats, meats, sugars, starches, proteins. They eat everything really well, everything except cellulose. And you can throw cellulose in because they just eat around it, and the microbes and the worms take care of it later. So we don't really separate what we put in there, with the exception of one thing. I once threw a dead skunk in my black soldier fly bin, which I thought was divine justice since they had been cleaning out my chickens. So when we got that skunk, we fed it to the soldier flies, which in turn feed the chickens. So we reversed the cycle on him, which I thought was a brilliant idea, and it worked really well. And interestingly enough, the black soldier flies went through this pile of skunk in their bin, and they ate up all the meat and skin and everything. And when soldier flies go through an animal carcass, they polish the bones, and the hair, the fur, the hair comes off the skin because the skin is consumed and there's nothing but free hair left. Okay. So after just a day, this skunk was reduced to a fuzzy looking pillow in the bin. But the soldier flies stayed away from the scent glands. They didn't touch it. They didn't eat the skin around it. They stayed away from them. And I didn't know this.
Fuck that.
Yeah, I didn't notice this, of course, because that's down in the middle of that pile. So about 4 or 5 days goes by, and those scent glands got rotten and burst one day. So when I thought everything was fine and those things were gone, all of a sudden these rotten, pure juice skunk scent glands erupted inside their bin, and oh man, it was bad. The poor little fly maggots were escaping all out the sides. I mean, they couldn't wait to get fast enough out of there, and the whole bin smelled so bad I didn't know what to do with it. So I picked the thing up and I rolled it over the side of my hill. It went down 30 or 40 feet, so I couldn't smell the thing anymore. And I waited till the next spring to go deal with it. So, note to self and all you guys that ever find a skunk, if you're gonna put it in your black soldier fly bin, you got to cut those scent glands out and get rid of them separately, because that was a mistake I don't ever want to make again.
Yeah,
For sure.
Sorry.
What else? Good fun. Hey, are we all by ourselves, or we got anybody listening out there?
No, we got 5 people listening live right now.
Well, I'd
We've
love
had
to take some
about
questions.
20. Let me see who's on.
we had somebody ask something. Oh yeah, Indigo Dogo wants to know if we have any other forums besides Facebook, because they don't do Facebook. So do you have a link to Roger's forum? What's that?
So yeah, we could. I don't know. We need to kind of figure out a new thing, because Facebook is like stopped doing links for videos and stuff, and we need to come up with something. So I'm thinking maybe we'll set up on Rogers, and we'll set up on Aquaponics.
If you go to schoolgrown.com or schoolgrown.org, there's some pictures of our school greenhouses there and a little movie that's pretty cool to watch. And there are also some school-grown Facebooks, although they're probably not regularly maintained. A couple sites that are waiting their time are up, and a couple different people kind of independently started a leaf greenhouse, I think, Facebook page. So I haven't paid attention to it for quite some time. I should probably go on and post some new pictures. We have an Instagram account too with some pictures, but yeah, we need a.
So if anyone's interested, I did put the links for School Grown as well as Fishnet Aquaponics in the description. And if there's any other links that you want, let me know, and I'll add them to the description as well, so that makes it easy for people to find you.
Yep. And for anybody who's recently.
So what other what are your crops, kind of your go-to crops, and the ones that you found the best, and maybe the ones that you thought would be really good and didn't turn out to be so hot?
Well, sure. So for school grown, I mean, everything's leafy green veggies for the most part. We've done tomatoes and some fruiting crops. We did carrots and root crops in the wicking beds and did really well. Beets, radishes. When the first year we had the school farm up and running, the intent was and still is to make this working greenhouse pay for itself at the school and community sites by the merits of its own food. So we tried to not look for grants or hand out money in order to make this happen, because part of the mission was to truly prove it's a sustainable model of growing plants. So if the farms pay for all their operation and their educational aspect, then that was a really wonderful goal. And I think they will, but in truth, they haven't so far. And it hasn't been because they haven't produced. It's because the motley crew of us here at School Grown still have our day jobs, and it's tough for us to focus and give it what it's worth. So the model for the first year with the greenhouse up at Felton, California, was to sell CSA shares, or a box of produce each week, to the families of the students who went there. And initially it was supported really well. We went up to 44 weekly boxes of produce, which we were able to produce no problem. In ideal conditions, I think we could have doubled that number. But it was our first year, and we were kind of coming into production. And to give the folks a good variety for their box that they're signing up for, we grew, yellow, white, and orange carrots. We had cucumbers, we had tomatoes, we had 2 or 3 different leafy greens, basil, lemon sorrel, for the most part, and watercress at some point too. And we did mushrooms for a bit as well. We worked with a company in Watsonville, California, that's called Far West Fungi, and they produce organic wood substrate mushrooms like oysters and shiitakes and a few others, but those are their primary ones. So Far West, they're in the business of selling mushrooms. So for them, the dynamics and the money and the economy of it means they produce these blocks of sawdust and sterilize them, and they inoculate them with a culture, and they grow them out, incubate them, and they grow 1 flush of mushrooms. They harvest all the mushrooms, And even though there's still going to be some mushrooms come out of those, it takes up more space than it's worth it for them to simply start another box and get higher yields. So they throw out all their blocks of mushrooms, which are about the size of a big loaf of bread. After they've been cut one time for mushrooms, they throw them out. So they were giving them to us, and we'd dunk them in the fish water and put them back in the trough there, and getting a second and sometimes a third flush of mushrooms out of those blocks. So we'd have shiitakes and oyster mushrooms as part of the CSA box, and it was really good. It was well supported by the community. Everybody loved it. From time to time, we'd throw in rosemary and mint and a few other things we had just to keep everything with good variety. But as time went on, we didn't get the renewals that we were expecting. I really had expected that only being able to produce 50 or 75 boxes of produce a week I thought it would kind of almost be a lottery of who would be able to get a box, not us trying to sell a box. You know, there's a couple hundred families go to the school, and there's a community that supports the schools very well all around it. So I had expected it to be a more popular thing. And as it turned out in reality, after that first initial sales run, the sales kind of dwindled. And by the end of the school year, there was almost none left. So I started asking folks and trying to determine why, because everybody wanted to support the program, but we just weren't getting the renewals from people that were already in love with it. And I know the reason why is the same reason I don't have a CSA subscription. I don't necessarily want to eat what somebody else wants me to eat that week. And we, being a fairly small greenhouse for that much production, we didn't have the choice of giving everybody this incredible variety that they'd get at the supermarket. So even though we had a good variety for the box, it was the same box more or less week after week after week. And I think people just got tired of the same, butterhead lettuce and basil and a handful of carrots each time. So we thought, okay, let's try a new model. So now we just finished a pilot run with selling our produce at the local grocery store. So Ben Lomond Market in Ben Lomond, California, they're taking our produce and selling it out. That was really good, because then, supposing the summertime's hot and we're growing a ton of basil, nobody wants to have a whole box of basil at once, and certainly not every week, right? But when you throw it to a market now, a much greater group of people who wants basil periodically, and it can change every week, that's okay, then they can take a whole bumper crop of basil and still pass it through. So we did really well actually with basil over the summer, and Thai basil, and not so good with lettuce because we had some aphid issues. And right now we're doing some remodels, so we don't have any produce there for sale now, but we will here after the holidays again. So anyway, that's been a much better model to support the school program. Yeah, there's the next part we got to get is our own accounting process so we can manage that. It's a nonprofit company running basically a commercial farm, so put some own unique twists and trouble managing all that stuff for sure too. So yeah, so that's the model for growing food there, and we really can grow just about everything. We have in that, it's an 1,800 square foot greenhouse. About 1,200 square feet of it is actual growing surface. We have 4 lanes of floating rafts where we do the leafy green production, deep water culture. 4 lanes that are 48 feet long. So about 860 holes per week go through a harvest on an average good season harvest. And then we have 2 beds of 48 foot long that have the wicking media that we put our fruiting crops and our root crops in. And yeah, some of the lessons we've learned is that while tomatoes and cucumbers are great plants to grow and they produce well too, they climb. And at a school farm, you don't really necessarily want to obligate the kids to have to get ladders and climbing structure and have to tend to plants that are climbing up to the ceiling. So we've opted this year to not go with climbing vine type plants. Keep it more to shorter stuff that just don't have the maintenance for the liability of the kids to get up there and prune those things. So we planted some berries because that's fun. So we did a bunch of gooseberries related to the tomatillo. Let's see, they have some other names. Paho berry is another name for it. I think there's a couple more names for it out there. But they look like a tomatillo. They have a parachute lantern skin around them, and inside is a bright gold fruit that tastes absolutely fantastic. So one of our media beds is all lined out with that right now. The other one's getting a new liner, so next week or two we'll get that one growing again. And yeah, so yeah, always challenges when you're starting new stuff like this.
You're just looking for something lower maintenance, so they didn't have to always be tying up tomatoes and different stuff like that, basically.
Yeah, not so much because it was too much work, but we're trying to keep it safe work while they're at school.
Right.
So we put a couple peppers on one end and a couple, just a couple to demonstrate how they grow and that they can be grown without a big tomato farm. If anybody's ever raised vining greenhouse tomatoes commercially, they are a lot of work. Commercially, when I did it at Viridis, we had 25 people managing that 99,000 square foot greenhouse. And by the time they finished pruning one end, it was ready to prune again at the beginning. And they were working hard. They were running all day long, 25 people just cutting and trimming suckers. That's not even harvesting. That's just pruning time. So that's a lot of people constantly, because the plants grow so fast and they have to be controlled or you'll never get control of them. And then they turn to pathogens and mildews and so on once they get too heavy in vegetation. So they take a lot of work. So at a school farm and like that, we didn't want to have the necessity every week of kids on ladders and that sort of thing. So bushing tomatoes are okay too, except the particular way we built our greenhouse is we wanted waist-high beds so that you didn't have bending over either. So they're great for things like carrots and beets and root crops, and small herbs for sure too. But even a tomato that's a bush variety, when it starts at waist-high, it still ends up at the ceiling. So our current model there is to plant more lower growing stuff in the wicking beds. And we probably should add some floor level beds as well so that we can grow some taller, bushier plants without worrying about their total height issue in the greenhouse, for sure. So it's funny, and you guys probably know too, but so many people when they hear aquaponics automatically think that it's A, synonymous with hydroponics, and B, is just for growing dope. So I've had people almost aghast when I tell them that I'm teaching aquaponics at a high school. And they think, my goodness, what is the world coming to that the students would be learning hydroponics or aquaponics? And it's you have to squish that. And nowadays, very few people care, but people are still surprised. So it's a bit of that re-education that, hey, what we're teaching kids here is a growing technique that grows all sorts of things. I mean, I've got avocado orchards being planted in aquaponics, and it's a methodology of growing for which is very important. And as this world is definitely changing, of course, the attention will go to cannabis quite naturally and more healthy in the future, I believe too. We had a senator come through and tour our farm, and as soon as the cameras and the reporters were off, that was the first question out of his mouth is, how does it grow cannabis? We have the city, some people, the higher ups from the supervisor's department and so on. Same thing. As soon as they don't have to pay attention to what they're saying, they look over and they say, "So how does this grow cannabis?" So,
right. As soon as the cameras turn off, that's the.
Yeah, well, it's that formal. They got a political figure to keep, so they're tactful about when they talk.
No, that's fine. I understand. It's not. I mean, the stigma is not their fault, or
No.
I'm not blaming them at all. It's just, I feel like on the flip side of that same coin is like the cannabis growers that want to act like growing cannabis is somehow completely different than any other plant on the earth. Like, oh, there's just nothing like it. And it's totally different. Just because you can grow this, you can grow that. And it's like, it's still a plant. Like, no matter what, and it's the same. The same principle too. And I feel like there's even a big, like most of the ones that I ran into, especially a while ago, maybe not so much now, but when I first started like 5 or 6 years ago, like even just mentioning aquaponics and cannabis in the same sentence was like, just can't, it doesn't work and waste of time, and you got to go hydro, and like all of
That's
that.
why we started the show.
Right. And so, like we talked about a lot, the only person on YouTube at that time really doing anything aquaponic in cannabis related was Silver Arm. Like he was the only one that was there putting anything out there. And so, and I think you just get these like almost like religious zealots about like how it has to be done, or like, they just, I feel like it's sort of like part of this human nature to like, some people have this thing where they want to make whatever they're doing as like, oh, you got to do it this way, or you got to do it that way. Like it just seems weird to me, because so many of like every grower that I talked to about doing cannabis and aquaponics, like basically was like flat out, don't do it. It's stupid. It won't work. Like everything else. So to me, it seems weird that somebody would associate it, like maybe outside, I guess, maybe more so now. It's Steve's fault. He made aquaponics and cannabis too famous. But yeah, I
famous.
Right, it's all my fault.
it's all your fault. Send the complaints to Steve at Potent Bonics.
It probably goes without mentioning too, but one of the things I paid close attention to at the conference, and probably Steve, you picked up on it too, is the underling of Murray. I think his name is Naveen, or no, Arvind. I can't remember his name now. Anyway, he made a point in speaking about the economics of the plants that you're growing when considering commercial aquaponics. He made a point that a lot of times it's not produce that people are wanting to make their best money on. It's aromatics or herbs or things grown for Chinese medicine, or aromatic oils and that sort of thing. And
Terpenes.
And cosmetics. There's a guy there doing cosmetics as well.
Well, historically,
terpenes, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about, terpenes.
Correct, and more things too. There's organic compounds way beyond the terpenes that are sacred for aroma and medicine.
Sure.
Look up loquat and a chemical called laetril. That's something I've been studying quite a bit lately because I have a family member with cancer. So cool stuff. But the point is, historically, hydroponics has had a tough time getting plants with the right properties for medicine and aromatics, not cannabis, just in general for these other plants that are thrown out there and being grown. And they're finding that aquaponics, because it's natural and organic and has more exposure to trace minerals from the random things that enter a system, and plant things that enter a system, that they're getting those medicinal qualities and flavors and aromas and so on out of plants. So we know this. I know you guys know that, but it's...
Or responses to microbial life that are sterilized from hydro environments. So natural reactions are stimulated in the plant, both in the system and otherwise, yeah.
And the presence of non-essential plant nutrients. Right. We know from science class and botany that we need 17 minerals to make our plants all happy, and that's what they put in bottled nutrient formulas. But in reality, the plants will absorb an awful lot of things that are not essential. And what they do with them is sometimes very essential. The molecule laetril that's in apple pits and apricot pits and loquat seeds real high, that contains cyanide in it. It's one of the reasons that the damn AMA and FDA have said don't eat apple pits, they'll kill you. Don't eat the apricot pits because they'll kill you, is because they contain cyanide. But they contain it in a complex, very wonderful glucose matrix that keeps them indigestible in the human. So when you eat these cyanide-containing molecules that are very naturally made, and I think very much a part of our pre-industrial diet, these things will pass through a normal human system unopened. So the cyanide never gets released. It's not in a toxin to anything in our body because it's been encapsulated. But cancer has such an affinity for sugar that it will attract these things, break open that glucose matrix that surrounds the cyanide, and then the cyanide reacts with the cancer cell to kill it. I think, I mean, I've read a lot about this particular molecule and plants associated with it and treatments. I think part of the reason that cancer is so more prevalent than it used to be is part of what we are eating, but part of what we're not eating. So when the government says, hey, everybody, don't eat your apple pits anymore, spit them out or you'll die. And those apple pits contain something that would absolutely prevent tumors from forming, then that's kind of a sad thing. So plants need, I shouldn't say that, humans and animals need the non-essential minerals that can be contained within plants if they're available for that plant to grow in. Now, cyanide's never going to make it to a bottle of nutrients that you put on your crop that's available down at the local hydro store, right? But plants do have a function for it, and they make compounds special to the animals and people for which they relate. So just 2 votes of confidence right there for aquaponics and natural biosystems to produce our plants, right?
Agreed.
Cricket.
Oh, Steve's checked out.
Hey, is there any comments and questions from the folks out there listening? I'd love to field some good info.
This is what's y'all's opinion on the best commercial systems for growing vertical, DWC, or flood and drain?
I'll take that one. Or I'll start. Do you want?
I was gonna say my opinion would be it totally depends on what crop you want to grow. You can each different types of crops will grow better in different types of environments. I would say vertical being probably the least viable.
Yeah, I've got a lot of experience in it, commercially speaking, too, because if it doesn't make money, you know about it real quick in this world of commercial farming. So that's for sure. Leafy greens grow great in deep water culture, even herbs, but definitely anything that's fast growing, vegetative growth, non-fruiting, non-flowering, does great in floating rafts. And when I started aquaponics, I was convinced by the logic of what I had read and the experiences of what I've read that a flood and drain gravel bed was the supreme method of aquaponics and hydroponics, and nothing else would come close. So I don't know why, looking back now, I thought that, but it was just such a convincing logical argument that the root zone has this exposure to nutrients and water and air and oxygen, so much so, right? So I was very convinced that that was the way to go. And I didn't try anything else for quite a while. And at some point, just to prove them wrong, I said, all right, I'm going to throw in some floating raft beds here and show you how it does less performance of everything I'm growing here. And I was truly amazed with the same water and the same system, how unbelievably well that floating raft deep water culture did for fast growing leafy greens. So definitely depends on what you're growing, and keep in mind that's a big positive market to get into for commercial growing. I've vegged cannabis using that method as well, but it doesn't work as well as media bases for flowering, in my opinion. So I use nowadays, and it'll changes every year, right? But nowadays, my favorite way to grow fast-growing leafy greens is floating raft, and everything else I put in wicking beds that are bottom watered but top fertilized. And that could come from composts or teas, or even just the sludge from your own aquaponics system. I like to top dress beds with that solid nutrient and allow the soil-like organisms that inhabit that rhizosphere to do the work they naturally did, while they're still getting a reservoir of aquaponic fish water.
I have a question. Did you replace your media beds, or did you add on raft beds with your media beds still attached to the system?
Once I got prototype experience with both raft beds and wicking type media beds, systems, I was changing locations and designs anyway, so I didn't have to try and repurpose flood and drain beds. So I just built them from the ground up as wicking beds. But I don't do, personally, and I'm not knocking it by any means, but I personally don't do any flood and drain. I haven't ever gotten any benefit over wicking beds personally, and I've got an awful lot of benefit from wicking beds. So I just kind of made that switch, and it keeps my life simpler. It's lower energy. It's much more resilient. So yeah, I do wicking beds, and
Do you
do that.
circulate through the wicking beds, or are you just?
So I've done both, and I'll tell you, if you start with a good medium for your wicking bed, and this was deceptive for me the first couple of years that I did this and I preached it. I told everybody, hey, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which end you feed from. It doesn't matter if it's flow through. It seems to do good all the way along. And about for the first year, you can't tell if a bed has water flowing through it underneath, or if a bed is a dead end and it receives it from one end or the other or both. You can't tell. The whole bed performs marvelously. You couldn't see it by any a trace of deficiency or plant growth or anything else within the bed. But after a period of time, you can start to tell. And I think that's because I started with some pretty organic, rich compost in my wicking material. And it didn't matter because it was a good organic soil bed for a period of time. We are definitely now at the school-grown leaf facility. We can definitely tell that the fertility comes from one end. You can definitely tell. So that's why now I just have a subterranean water bed. I still don't care if it's flow through or fed from one end and a dead end leg, but I do top dress with some organic fertility from time to time, and not often, every week or two, just to put some material in there and keep the worms busy up in that upper layer of material. And when we're coming back to the question, I'm not a fan of vertical farming. In the sense where you're trying to grow plants up through a vertical space. And I clarify that because vertical farming can also mean vertically integrated, where you do multiple things at one site to save time and ergonomics of handling and so on. So a vertically integrated concept I'm very much in favor of, but actual using of mechanisms and devices and special growing towers and so on to get vertical growth of plants, especially if these plants are horizontal or flat lying plants, I'm not a big fan of it all. It takes energy to move water up. And that's a big fact. I mean, I've seen some commercial models where 17 stories tall and they're pumping water to the top. And I just know that the reality is that that's not a sustainable concept. When I grow commercially, I grow vertical plants. I grow plants that grow vertically to take advantage of the space that would be saved by vertical farming. So for instance, I know it's popular out there for folks to put vertical growing devices on the north wall of their greenhouse because it doesn't matter if it casts a shadow, and it's some good indoor use of space to go ahead and put towers and that sort of thing on the north wall. I've found it much more efficient to just put a plant that grows up on the north wall. So that's where I grow my tomatoes or cucumbers or my vining crops. So without having to give them any special infrastructure or pump water 10 feet up in the air, I can get the advantage of that space by plants that simply grow vertically. There's a huge wave of frenzy almost that vertical farming will be the food of the future, the up a wall over the top of other buildings and so on. And I just don't see that. I think energy conservation is going to become more important in the future, which is going to make vertical farming completely obsolete. And the other thing is if you are in an area for which everything is artificial, then I think vertical farming stands a spot. And could be something, but it doesn't stand a spot because it's a more efficient or better way to grow. It earns a place then because it's the lesser of the evils in an artificial place to grow.
Well, to me, the biggest thing too is the food safety issues with the upper level stuff dripping on the lower level stuff, and if you happen to get a pathogen in the system, it'll catch like wildfire, and then it's dripping onto the produce that people actually are eating. And especially in an aquaponic system, when you're running fully recirculating, you can't afford that as a liability.
I agree. And it happens invariably in vertical systems.
Yep.
The tower farms that are the fence posts with the slot hollowed out, roots grow, roots take up mass, and they dam up waterways. And as soon as the roots dam up the planned path of water going down a vertical system, then the water is going to seek its own way out, which is typically out across the plant and off the end of one leaf where it snaps down onto another one. I had some of my most stellar growth of strawberries ever in a vertical system. It was a stacked unit with, I don't know, 3 or 4 little molded outlets around each one, and then it stacked up 6 feet or something. And we planted it up. The plants went crazy. They just erupted in vegetative growth and then a bunch of runners. And then as soon as the roots occupied the space for which they were designed to be, the water spilled out over the plants. And in just as fast as we saw that incredible, wonderful vegetative growth, we saw the pathogenic disease spread through the whole tower and destroy it all. I mean, just as fast. So the strawberry roots especially don't like moisture. And their leaves don't like organic water dripping all over them from time to time. So I'm not a fan of vertical farms.
Oh yeah, like maybe once and then dry out, or like any kind of consistency though, and strawberries just wilt out.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not saying there's no place for it. And don't let my pessimism discourage you. Let my pessimism encourage you folks that are into vertical farming to come up with those solutions. But fundamentally, the 2 issues I have with vertical farming is that it takes energy to pump water up. Okay. And the second one is that our natural ball of light in the sky comes from above. And when you start stacking plants vertically, then those plants create shadows. And those shadows are lost horizontal space that was free and easy. So never does a naturally illuminated vertical farm exceed the growth of a flat farm. I've done the math. I've witnessed the results. I've had folks say, well, in this 1 square foot farm, I'm growing 5 heads of lettuce in it because it takes 1 square foot as the sun shines down to grow this one. But what they never consider is that it casts a shadow that's 5 square feet, 1 foot by 5, right? And that shadow that it casts displaced other growing area. And when you're all said and done, the yield per square foot from a greenhouse of vertical farming is always lower than a well-designed horizontal grow.
And you've increased the head height of how high you're pumping, and
yeah, and all the labor that comes involved with that. Pumping up water is one thing. When you don't pump water up, the failure of those plants is quick because water likes to drain down and leave those roots dry quick. When your mechanism...
That's why we redesigned the tower. That's why we made our own tower at Sylvia's, because we had a zip grow tower basically dump all of the system water onto the floor, causing a huge flood and draining the system. And first off, all the lettuce died once the pump ran dry. And within, 6, maybe even 4 hours, those lettuce are toast without water. It's really quick. Whereas with the ones that we had a little bit of a pouch that had held some amount of soil that would retain some amount of water. You can go about 48 hours without that tower running, where you could buy time. Even if you had a power outage, you get by for a day or two and it still wouldn't kill the thing. So
yeah, I think we'll get better vertical systems out there, and I think the ones that are out there have a place, arguably, in some place in the world. But
you bring up a great argument, though, with the square footage. The shadow displaces more than you'd actually benefit from doing a horizontal, and that's really what it comes down to. Is that you'd be far better off, even if you had like an 8-foot or 10-foot, second trough above it, so that both are getting light for most of the day. You could still double stack it in a greenhouse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And access too, not just light that penetrates through, but airflow and access are also big deals.
Yep.
You can't pack them so closely that you can't get in there to harvest them, or now you have, greater complication and expense and so on to get in there and do anything about it. So,
plus you
especially for IPO,
as tall as your plant towers are too. So if your lighting source, gets up too high from your lowest level of plants, then you're going to get a lot of diffuse light and wasted space just from diffusion from your light source. So, yeah.
Sure. So there's some systems out there like container type farms, and they're using vertical strips of LED lights that have a good canopy penetration, and they're coming vertically. So it would make sense then that the grows could be vertically as well.
Sure. I think kind of what
per cubic foot, I think there's some advantages there. But the reality is those artificially illuminated steel boxes of sweat are so inefficient on the whole grand scheme of things compared to natural light or supplemental light and some natural light coming through spaces. And everybody's got their own, but I started into this whole aquaponics playing field wanting home-raised, cheap, good, sustainable organic food. So when the trend starts becoming a bigger waste of electricity, a bigger waste of resources, a greater pathogenogenic risk, and really all they're doing is sucking grant dollars right now. There's huge monies for vertical farming because prominent people have said that's the future. And it's all just thrown out to the wind. And from what I've seen, it's just a lot of money spent.
Oh yeah, no, was it they raised $200 million, or one company's raised $200 million, and they haven't grown a single plant yet. So
no, and the basis of their system
and it's based on a non-food, it's based on a technology that's non-food safe, which is even better. But that's a whole other argument.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert in that. I hate to ruffle feathers, so.
Oh yeah, I don't.
I've done a lot of things. Well, I've done a lot of things. Yeah. I've done a lot of things that I thought were brilliant at the time, and I learned they were just dumb later on. And I've done a lot of things that were dumb at the time and turned out they were brilliant. So in the spirit of innovation and stumbling upon some cool things, I like to see stuff like a $200 million plastic farm go up. That's hopefully something good will come of it. Some good research or some application for growing underground or bomb shelters. I don't know. Whatever, something good will come of it. So I like the fact that it's out there and it's being done. There will be advancements made. It's just comical to me to see some really good programs go without funding for these really bad programs to get such huge funding.
Well, that some of the claims they're producing, they're claiming, was it 15,000% more produce than a typical farm or something completely stupid? And it was like, dude, no, like that's just not even remotely mathematically possible. Like, just stop.
Yeah. Well,
anyways,
yeah,
just it's one thing to like be ahead of the curve or whatever. It's another thing to just preach snake oil. But whatever.
Yeah, and ironically enough, the snake oil's got a lot of money behind it. So
I know.
I don't blame
this
them.
in other industries. Look at cannabis. Look at Aurora.
Yep.
Let's talk about that for a second. Aurora is $2 billion right now. That's completely overevaluated.
Yeah,
insanely overevaluated. That's going to price adjust down to well below $1 billion once this all shakes down.
Yeah,
and if anyone doesn't think so, you're dreaming.
Yeah, it's first to market. Got a good name, not necessarily first, but
well, yeah, I don't know if you saw they had a big recall this week. So
no, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, they mislabeled a bunch of their CBD medication.
Yep. Well, hey, for anybody who's coming on late again, I just would like to punch my little workshop build here too at December 1 through 3. I hope you guys can make it. It's SoCal. It's not too far for you to go.
December 1 through 3. So I actually have the Blazers Cup on the 2nd and the 3rd.
Okay. Bummer.
Otherwise, I would be there. It's in San Bernardino, so which depending on how far it is, maybe I can come out on the 1st. If not,
yeah, maybe on your way down, stop in for a little bit. Yeah. And if anybody wants to go, drop me an email to jp@schoolgrown.com or .org, and we'll get you directions. But the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, we're doing that build for the folks with disabilities, and it's a great piece of property. It's really beautiful. So we'll have a barbecue and a couple hours of class time at lunch each day. So that'll be good fun, I think, for sure. Any other questions in your little box of comments down there?
Let's see what else we got. Is it okay to throw some non-fruiting plants in my plant bed now that I'm in flower and don't need that as much N? Yes, you absolutely can do that. I know Marty and I both are big proponents of seeding the beds with lettuce and chamomile and sugar snap peas, cucumbers, and I don't know what else.
Herbs, yeah, I grow like sage, peppermint, watercress. If any of those start like flowering, because some of the herbs can start flowering just on their own. and you can just pull the tops right off, and they'll don't have to worry about them too much. And it's not like they're going to produce a ton of, of flour, but you can just pull them off, and they'll go right back in the veg, and so no big deal there. And they make a great tea too if you like mint tea. That's awesome. The other thing I do is I'll soak those and use those for pest management. So um, I'll make a spray like mint or lemongrass or a number of different things that you can grow in that'll primarily take up nitrogen, which you want to do in flower. So we do that all the time. So lettuce, so you can go like microgreens if you want to, and release like some people do what are they seed sprout teas, which release enzymes from all of the seed sprouting at the same time. So I'll seed a lot of my beds with microgreens, like about right about the time I flip into flower, and so you can grow like buckwheat or peas, anything that grows fast and will start taking up nitrogen right away. The other thing you can do is if you need to do it really fast, we've talked about this before too, is that you can get green onions from the store. They're all cleaned up and nice, and you can cut the top off and eat them. So you still get your money's worth, and then just take that end that still has roots and plant it in your system, and it'll start taking up nitrogen right away as it regenerates, and you'll get more green onions out of it. So that's another great one that you can do as well. So lots of good stuff. Basically, my rule is if it doesn't fruit or flower at any point in its life, then it gets taken up. Be careful with herbs though. Like they'll take over a bed in like no time. So just make sure you have a way to contain them, or you're willing to trim them. You can actually, I just pull mine right up out of the bed, and you'll see the big roots that grow out. I call them runners, and they grow out sideways and spread the plant out. So you can cut those, and they actually have a really high concentration of oil in them as well. So they're some of the best ones to use for your pest management if you want to do a really strong spray for like aphids or something like that.
You can make bubble hash from your mint too. Don't forget.
That's what Steve told me. So those
really good.
You got to be careful for those because it'll just spread out and take over a bed in no time. But greens is great. Like basically anything you like to eat is what I like to eat.
You only get 3%, 1 to 3% return on your mint hash, so you need lots of it.
You do need a lot. It does grow crazy though, so that it loves aquaponics. Like it'll take over.
So people that don't know, so you can actually use mint hash. You can make a bubble hash from it, and if someone gets too high, that's with you, they smoke the mint hash. It'll bring them down. There's a compound in the mint hash that'll actually sober them up and help remove the cannabinoids from their bloodstream really rapidly.
And that's mint hash made from trichomes on mint leaves?
Yes, there's actually trichomes and cannabinoids in mint. There's actually what is it? The lily family has a lot of cannabinoids as well.
Yeah.
There's 5 or 6 different plant families that actually have cannabinoids, and then there's actually most plants have terpenes. Not all, but I think it's like 70+% of plants have terpenes. So you can get and then there's flavonoids and a bunch of other things that basically are the same thing as terpenes, functionally. So you can do a lot of playing depending on what you're doing and what you're trying to do chemically.
What kind of leaves or what age of leaves would be best to extract the mint hash? I've never heard that before.
Just anything that's not brown.
Any
That's
stage of
been
growth?
a really long time. I mean, shit. As long as I can remember smoking weed, that was like the remedy for people that smoke too much was the mint hash. That we would actually you could take it and you could actually do like a charas or like a scissor hash. You can like rub the mint on your hands and you'll actually get it like a resin, and you can actually like roll it into a ball enough to give someone if they smoke too much. But it can be like an immediate remedy for people that
I never heard of that before. I knew they had trichomes and that they had cannabinoids, but I never heard about the 2I thing. Now I'm gonna have to get.
It's some kind of cannabinoid.
One of my friends is in trouble. Watch out.
Yeah, it's some kind of cannabinoid like blocker or something. It's totally safe to take, but I've only given it to people that have did too many vapes. like, or when I first bought a volcano, there was a couple of older people that I given a bag of volcano to, and they got a little too fucked up, and they kind of bring them back a little bit. That was about it, you know.
Okay, so I've got a question for you, Steve. I know somebody who sells a medicinal vape pen, and they have as a flavor a mint vape flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Does the mint counteract the absorption or use or value
entire-
of the medicinal cannabinoids in there?
It depends on if it's a raw mint extract or if it's just the mint flavor. You know, if it's just the mint terpene. So it depends. If it's just the terpenes, you're fine. But there's actually a cannabinoid in mint that you can separate and actually. I know when you do the full gland head extraction, like with bubble hash, you can actually full pull it because I've done it. You can use the exact same bubble bags you use for your cannabis. It's the same process.
Huh.
So.
Huh. That's fascinating.
You can also do what actually work even better if you're doing just mint is to go ahead and do like a bubble, not a bubble, a dry ice bubble bag extract. So you take your mint and you put them in a bubble bag, and then you throw a bunch of dry ice on top of it and wait like 30 to 45 seconds, and then you give it a couple of good violent shakes on like a nice mirror or a glass table. And you take a credit card and you scrape it all into a pile, and you do that 2 or 3 times every 30 to 45 seconds as it chills back down. And you can, in the beginning, you need to give it about 1 to 2 minutes to cool down all the material. You got to kind of flash freeze it almost in the bag. But you give it a couple of good shakes, and the flash freezing will separate the crystal heads. And if you use like a 120 micron or a 160 or even a 180 micron bag, you can actually pull the mint cannabinoid heads.
And those have to be smoked or just consumed?
Yeah, I mean, it tastes really good. You can smoke it, you can eat it, you can do whatever.
But
It's
they
a
work even
product.
just to eat.
It's like smoking like a breath mint or something. It's really good, actually. If you have like a super stony hash, like something that's like super high in CBN, maybe something that's 2 or 3 years old, like you can actually mix a tiny little bit of it in, and it'll take away some of the stoniness without totally blocking the high. You know, if you get the ratio right. I've used it in that kind of sense, or in that context as well.
It's interesting.
Very interesting.
I don't think I've ever been like, oh, this weed gets me too high.
Speaking of which, so I just wanted to say I got a chance to smoke a bunch of hash from Frenchie Cannoli with Frenchie Cannoli over the weekend. For those of you who don't know, he's like premier hash producers on the entire planet, which was really awesome. I know Tommy still has a little bit of it, so I know we'll have like me, Tommy, and Ken here on one of these episodes coming up, and we'll take it.
Where's Tommy? Where's everybody? Nobody showed up.
I know Tommy's still got, so all of us that went out to Vegas you can probably hear it in my voice, all of us got a convention cold, so he's kind of down for the count. And then I know
Convention cold as in smoked a lot of weed.
So yeah, I'll have a really cool, I'm not going to announce what I'm doing for Thanksgiving yet tomorrow, but we're going to have a really cool short Thanksgiving message from a very cool place tomorrow.
Awesome.
And I'll leave it at that. I know Marty knows, but he's not allowed to say. You guys will like it though.
Alrighty.
Alrighty.
I don't know how late you usually go. I'm good for whatever, but I think it's after 8.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate you coming on. Thanks a lot. And I'm gonna sit here and rant for a couple of minutes about local's ability to mess with my ability to actually open a goddamn business. But if you want to take off, I very much appreciate it. If you want to plug your different things one last time, and then for anyone that's looking for links on what he's mentioning, we'll have I already have I think most of them in the description. If there's any I'm missing, I'll make sure I add them in the description as well.
Okay, and I'll stay on too and visit. I'm in no hurry. I just wanted to make sure we got everything out in case there's any questions floating out there before the end of the program. And just again, one more time for what I'm coming up with is just starting next week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're going to do a little workshop and build in SoCal, California. So we're going to build all the beds for, and possibly even the whole greenhouse for, depending on what we're like for materials, for a 2,200 square foot farm that will be selling commercial produce and microgreens. through another group called Global Aquaponics with James Borgman at the head there. He's a great guy, by the way, and a great project that he's doing. They put folks with disabilities to work, give them a meaningful job, gives them a wage, by the way, which for them is incredible. You know, the folks with disabilities only get, I think, $860 a month. And this is Santa Cruz, where the median home price is like $900,000. So they don't make a lot of money. They live in controlled rent housing, and there's nothing left over beyond very basic food. So for these folks with disabilities, part of the troubles that troubles, the concern that I'm so keenly interested in is that they don't have a meaningful fit. If you're not going to work every day, at some point, you're not part of a meaningful society, right? So what we do for our time, how we spend our days, what we do for work, and so on is a big part of who we are. You know, we are here on this program right now for the work that we do every day. So for folks that don't have typical and ordinary jobs but would like to, there's a missing part of them belonging to a project and being needed in this world. So it's nice to have these folks have a meaningful job. They are doing very wonderful work. They love the work that they do. They're quite capable of doing it, and they get spending money completely on top of their disability payment, and they love doing it. And it also gives a paying gig for the caretakers who want to come in and learn aquaponics and help these folks out. It gives them a paying gig too. So it's just a great program. It's a disability insurance well spent, and it's really happy to see. So we're going to build those folks a new farm this next week, December 1, 2, and 3. And also, I'm right after that. I'm headed to Hawaii for probably the whole month of December, maybe even into January. I'm looking to get a property there where we can do a permaculture and sustainable education-based workshop compound. So I'm keep you guys all tuned for that. And as soon as hopefully we get what we're looking for out there on the big island of Hawaii, then I'll post some classes, and love to do some classes with you too, Steve, coming up. You're somebody I admire very much. So yeah, once we get some Hawaii time over there, we'll get some classes posted for next year. I'm reluctant to post next year's classes now because I'm not sure where the place in Hawaii will be and where I'm going to be at various times of the year. So I still need a month or so to sort all those details out. So come to Santa Cruz this coming weekend, and December 1st,
Cool.
2nd, 3rd, if anybody can.
Marty will be back. He had a minor situation with a child he had to address. He'll be back in a couple of minutes. Hopefully.
Yep.
He PM'd me what was going on.
Yeah, kids.
Yeah, aggro. So I'm gonna rant for a second. I'm gonna leave out exactly where it is that this happened because I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I am gonna rant for a second. There's a township that I was working with for many months, many months, and everything was going great. We were 2 to 4 weeks away from getting our license. Now all of a sudden they want us to wait until next November.
Dang,
Man.
that's rough.
This is the kind of crap that we have to put up with in the cannabis industry.
And you're not going to say the
Needless to
particular
say, we're now moving on to other townships and other areas because there's no way I'm waiting until November. So they lost our business, and it's that simple. They lost a enormous amount of money coming into their township and everything else, all because of a few people that wanted to go and preach reefer madness. Despite the fact that the particular area had an 88% pro Amendment 64 vote. Imagine that. The single highest township in all of California voting against anything other than nurseries. Mind blown. I'm not going to scream and yell. I really want to. But God damn it. Can we just get one simple license, please? So anyways, on to other places, and everything is fine. We actually have some really good prospects for some other places, even just down the road. It's not a big deal. It's just exceedingly frustrating when you work in one particular township for 8 months, 10 months, only for them to just completely throw a wrench in your entire business for no reason other than a bunch of people got bussed in to scream and shout. So yeah, you guys have heard Marty go off on it. Now you're gonna hear me go off on it because this is just I this I haven't bitched about it between for now. This is the eighth time, maybe sixth time, eighth time that this has happened, where we've gone and set up in a township, or maybe not set up, but lined up to be in a township, and then had properties lined up and everything, and it's just the local townships. Everything in California now wants to wait until May, June, July, or even worse, November in a lot of cases, in some cases now. And it's like, guys, there's people trying to do business here. Like, we're trying to open up new businesses. Everything's legal in January. Legal. Do we not understand what the word legal means? Legal, as in they should not have local ability to block businesses. We got to get rid of this local control bullshit. It has to stop. They have no right to tell us what we can do. It has to stop. And if you're pushing for a legalization bill in a state, you got to ban local control. It has to stop. Put up with this shit. Tobacco doesn't have to put up with this shit. Shit. In Vegas, hookers don't have to put up with this shit. Okay? Why do we? No other agricultural business has to put up with this. No other any kind of farming stuff has to put up with this. This is insane. It just we're continue to be overtaxed and just repeatedly abused on every single level, be it state, local, county. It just repeated abuse on every single level. And now you have Indiana, you got this jackass attorney general who thinks he has the right to ban CBD. What the fuck kind of piece of shit wants to block children from having seizure medication or block people from their cancer medication? Like a special place in hell for this guy, you know? And I don't normally rant like that, but like Jesus Christ, man. Sorry if that offends you, but like we got to have some kind of sanity with this. There's people that are dying and children that are hurting that are being blocked from medicine for no reason other than ignorance. This has to stop. Anyways, I'm done ranting, but it just is frustrating. Anyways, sorry, I don't normally go off like that, but this is the third, I don't know, far too many times has this happened. And it's like you get a busload of people that come in and scream and shout for 5 minutes and they get what they want, and it has to stop. We've seen this over and over again, especially with this week. I mean, I was floored to see that the Attorney General in Indiana thought that he had the right to do that. This has been universally ruled upon by Congress. This has been protected by Congress since 2014. He does not have the legal authority to block CBD. This was ruled upon by Congress of the United States that overrules him in 2014. This is why we got to have some kind of universal police for getting high. That's great. That's totally cool. We can debate that. But protect the people that need this to survive. This is crazy. So, anyways, I think we're going to wind things up. I don't know if Marty's going to make it back. Thanks to everybody for watching this week. We'll be back again next week. I have some really awesome guests lined up. Quick announcement, Jorge Cervantes will be on the second half of December. That'll be a really cool episode. I know he was the first introduction for formal cannabis education that I've had. And yeah, that'll be really cool. Thanks again, John, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I know I've known you for quite a long time. You're welcome to come back on the show anytime you want. Especially let me know when you have, classes and stuff. I'm happy to plug them on here for you.
Okay, hey, thank you. Much appreciated.
And you guys have seen. Look at Michael McShane. He's been on the show multiple times. Okay, Michael McShane survived He's HIV for almost 40 years and beaten cancer 11 times using only cannabis oil. The guy's never taken an antiretroviral drug or anything else to try and beat his stuff. Like, the guy's a walking poster board for cannabis medication. You know what I mean? The guy's been featured on every cannabis publication you can think of. And he's a friend of the show. He's been on here a bunch of times. You guys have seen him. You know, the fact that they want to go and try to block this stuff is insane. Show me a medication that the pharmaceutical companies can do that can do the same thing. It doesn't exist. So, you know what? The last thing before we end the show, the DEA now wants to allow the synthetic version of THC. There's a company that figured out how to make a synthetic THC that's not plant derived, and make that Schedule 2, but keep THC Schedule 1. Now, please explain to me how a synthetic version of a chemical is somehow medically viable, right? But a natural version is not. Where's the logic in that? There is none. So it's only a matter of time before we finally get this decriminalized, but it'll be interesting to see if it's being taken over by the pharmaceutical industry. But you're seeing a lot of stuff happen right now in the news, especially this week, that are pertaining to that, both in Indiana and then with this new DEA ruling with the synthetics, that's kind of pushing the whole industry into the synthetic only shit with the Epilex and now with the THC synthesis. And that's what they're doing. They're pushing everything to synthetic instead of the plant derived so they can control it because they can't patent it otherwise. You know, it's just stupid. Anyways, thanks for everyone for watching. We'll be back again next week. I think we'll have Vapor Slide on next week and maybe one other guest. And then the week after, I have another really awesome cannabis guest lined up. So tentatively. So thanks for everyone for watching. And have a great weekend. And be sure to check it out. Marty's YouTube channel is AP Meds. I know his Patreon is also AP Meds. He puts out a lot of great content. You can check out my YouTube channel at Potent Ponics on YouTube. You can also check me out over on SoundCloud if you guys want to listen to the audio version of the podcast. I will be getting those caught up. I know I'm slightly out of date on that. I've just been traveling a lot the last 2 weeks. I haven't actually been home in 2.5 weeks except for yesterday and the day before. So I was out in Vegas and all that stuff, which we'll play catch up on next week. So thanks to everyone for watching, and we'll have a real short episode tomorrow. Take care.